My name is Erin Hokenbreaker from the 7th Bone Tailoring team, and today I want to teach you how to take the hem or side panel of a dress and add a ruffle sleeve onto a garment. The sleeve that I have in mind is a ruffle version of a cap sleeve. So on myself, it's going to come to about right here, cover, and go back to the crossback. It's not going to come all the way under. In order to get this kind of shape and to have that ruffle feel with lots of gathers and fluff, I'm going to use a very large sleeve. So I've chosen a robe pattern. I'm going to take this sleeve from the robe and modify it as I go. You're looking for a pattern that has a loose sleeve. You don't want a tailored blazer, nothing that's set in, just something simple. To get started, iron your pattern with a dry iron to get the creases out. Now I'm going to go ahead and just trace out the smallest shape here. Do mark your notches. 2 notches means it's the back of the sleeve, 1 means it's the front. We're using the muslin to get a rough shape and draft a practice sleeve before we cut into our valuable fabric that we only have limited amounts of. I'm using a fabric that's an equivalent weight as my dress. Okay, now go ahead and cut. We're not even going to worry about seam allowances. We really just need the shape so we can start draping. So to start, we're going to use a really long stitch, number 5, because we're going to add 2 rows of gathering to the top of our sleeve cap. Now remember, this is the back and this is the front. The front always has a bigger scoop because you have more range of motion towards the front. I'm using an isocord thread today and a Bernina ballpoint needles. Leave a long tail at the end for gathering. Now my next row, I'm going to go just about 1/8 of an inch next to my first line. You want to make sure not to backstitch at the end and leave a long tail. We're also going to write on here front and back. Okay, the next step is to pull in your gathering stitches. So how you want to do this is you want to choose just top or bottom, but not all 4. So I'm going to choose the top 2 threads and pull and gather. And you want to be gentle when you do this because you do not want your threads to break. Pull and then just scoot that gather up. Alright, we made sure to mark front and back. And now what I want you to do is you're going to go to a mirror and position it and see what you like or don't like about this fullness. And I want you to, you're looking at the overall shape of it. I'm looking in a mirror now too. Figure out what the center of your body is and pin that the center of the sleeve. And then the front, now I said I wanted mine to stop about right here, so I'm going to loosen the gathers because I do want some coverage underneath. And bring it there. And then in the back, you probably can't reach it, so just estimate and pull down the gathers a little bit. Now, it's pretty cute. I don't mind it. Don't mind it at all. Except for the length, obviously, is not ideal. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your chalk, and this is the fun part, and I want my cap to start right about there. And I want this just to be kind of like a casual, summer, easy breezy sleeve. So just go ahead and look, and if you're scared, just make it a little bit longer. So I know that will be the front, and then one more, you're still estimating. You want to feel where your crossback is, that's where I want it to stop. So I'll put it right about there. Alright, now take your sleeve off. So now let's look at what we have. Feel free to pop your gathering stitches, you're not going to use this guy again. Okay, so there's the back, there's the front. Now let's look at the new shape, just the way that I chalked it. Ah, nice, it's got a nice curve going onto it. So now what you can do is you can take a French curve and just go ahead and follow that. And this can be a softer shape. I always recommend when you have a pattern, you want what's called the soft lines, the good lines. It always makes sewing easier. Okay, so we are gonna do a rolled hem on the bottom of this, so I'm gonna cut it about 3/8 of an inch longer. I've already decided I'm gonna have to make a really short skirt in order to get 2 sleeves, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. I went ahead and I marked where the dress is going to hit, and I'll cut it up now. All right, this is where we have to make choices. So I've realized if I want to hem my skirt, it's only going to be the most I can get away with before it becomes too short is about 5 inches, which definitely is not enough for our pattern. But you know what? This would make a great shirt as well. So let's do that. I want my new shirt to hit right about here, and that will give me plenty of room for 2 sleeves. To get the extra fabric, you want to turn the garment inside out. I'm going to measure up evenly from the hem. I'm going to also leave a little bit of room so I can hem the shirt, but I want to make sure, look at that I have enough extra fabric, and I do. That's the shirt right here. I can get 2 sleeves out of this. This is going to be cute. Okay, now normally you would not use red chalk, but for you I will. So I'm going to come up 12, I'm going to drop it a 1/2 inch to make enough room for a rolled edge. And all the way around, I'm going to take the same measurement. And if this was your project at home, you'd probably want to use a white chalk. You'll still be able to see it. Flip it over, same thing, same measurement. This is a great time if you are curvier. You can always add a little bit more length to the back of your shirts. Usually about a 2-inch drop is enough. And then we'll cut it 1 layer at a time using our Tula Pink scissors. Ooh, a little too high there. It's gonna be all right. And you see how that one's kind of dipping because of my mistake? We'll just even that out. There you go. No problem. The great thing about linings is what you do to the self, you can do to the lining. The self is the outside fabric. So again, we'll go same measurement up. And we're doing this because your lining is always cut shorter than the regular dress. So if we take them up an even amount, your lining will still be a little bit shorter than the self or the outside of the shirt edge, which is what you want. And again, the more special the project, the more time to lay it out. But when you're just learning to sew, go quick, go fast, take your time, make mistakes, it's more fun. We're gonna cut 1 layer at a time. Okay, and we're gonna need this lining because our dress is sheer here. So the problem is we need to finish the edge. We're gonna have some sort of seam allowance sticking out here unless we find a way to finish it. The easiest way will be to add a lining, smooth it out. Pin the pattern and cut. I'm gonna cut all the way around, but I'm going to leave the edge. I have a trick I like to do for rolled hems. On our pattern, we can tell the right side from wrong side on one piece because there's a seam. We want to make sure we can tell on the other. So I recommend taking a little pencil, make an X, and this is the wrong side of the fabric. Now we're also going to need to keep straight front versus back. I like to use Tailors tacks to keep these things straight. You could also use a safety pin. Tailors tacks are nice because you can still press them and they go away easy. So I'm just going to make a tack at the front, at any color that will stand out. A Tailors tack is when you use a piece of thread in order to mark the placement of a pattern call out on the fabric itself. They're very handy because they do not leave a mark, and you can also iron over them. They're easy to remove. So now we know that that's the back and that's the front. Finally, to do my rolled hem trick, we're going to mark not our finish line, but just below it. So the way that I do a rolled hem is super simple, and it really only requires 2 feet. I've found that when you're sewing on garments, especially existing garments, you can't really use the rolled hem foot that you would like from Bernina that does the beautiful chiffon hems. This is because you're going to run into existing seams such as this, and it's just going to come in and gunk up that rolled hem foot. So you kind of need to take the time to make the rolls yourself when you're garment sewing. All right, Step one for what I'm going to do, I'm going to do some test stitches, and I'm going to find a stitch that feels right with the fabric. This has a little bit of stretch to it, and I'm just using a straight stitch in the number 1 foot. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So here is the trick. To do this quick, you're going to switch over to your number 5. It's got this little groove right here, which is going to help you stay consistent. Now bump your needle over 3 spaces and situate your fabric so it's really nice and out of the way. Now I know you don't have to hold your threads with a burnina, but I still really like to. So what I'm going to do, now this is a white garment, so I put this stitch purposefully on the inside of the garment. So in order to achieve the ruffle effect, I want it to flutter a little bit. I'm going to kind of stretch it as I do this. So I'm going to go over once on my line. And as you're going, you're folding on your chalk line. And then reset, look, and fold it over again. And again. And again, I'm kind of stretching it as I go, so that this will be a very fluttery rolled hem. So you can see I've got this lettuce movement going on. And it's very, very close to the edge. So my next step, I'm going to press this. So I pressed out some of the fluttery, but I can always get that back by scrunching it. So that can come back, but it's going to help me have a steady hand because I need to cut away some of my fabric. It's all about how you hold it. Depending on the fabric, you might want to press it one more time after you cut it. The more delicate the fabric, the more time you want to spend with the pressing cloth at the iron. I think this one's going to be fine. So what we can do is now just go for round 2. The same needle placement should work. If you're having trouble, you can always move it over one more spot and have it be a little bit thicker of a rolled hem, but it will be easier to catch. The second roll takes some precision to get started. I like to use a silk pin and put it in to get it going, and drop it right on that pin. You can take the pin out because the fabric is caught and fold over the edge with your finger. Okay, now you're ready to get started. Do a back stitch at the very beginning. Back stitch. And same thing, you're just, again, I'm going to pull it a little bit because I want the flutter. You're just folding and feeding it. So now we have our 2 sleeves prepped. We can tell where the front and the back is of the self fabric. But now our dress, like I said, it's sheer right here. So in order to finish it, we're going to need to put the lining and the self like this around it, sew here, and flip it out. We don't need the lining to be as big, so what we're going to do is some pattern making right here on our original pattern. A great way to do this is to take your own measurement. So I know roughly, again, we're being very loose, just having fun. From my cross back here over to the front is about 12 inches. So let's see how much we need to subtract. We can lose about half of this. So let's just slash and spread right here. We're going to do a few different pivot points just to keep this overall flutter shape. We want to lose about 10 to 12 inches. So we have 1, 2, 5 cuts. So let's lose about 1 inch on each cut. We can keep the bottom about 1/8. always cool how the shapes change. Great, so we have about 16 inches. My measurement was 12, 4 inches of ease. That's plenty to keep it soft. The other thing we want is we want this to be a little bit shorter. So right now, let's go ahead and trim it. Just taking off that 3/8 of an inch will be just enough. We don't have to worry about the lining, but it will still look complete. So let's take our lining, pin the pattern to the lining and cut. Now, we're doing this really just to finish the edge here, so I think we can actually cheat, make it shorter, and just leave it a raw edge. It's not going to fray. I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter just to make sure that it's soft and doesn't show, because it's not the main feature of our sleeve. Now we're going to do another thread tack to remind us where the front is on the lining. Now we're ready to add the gathering stitches to all 4 pieces, the 2 self and the 2 lining. We're going to switch back to our number 1 foot, move the needle back to center, and lengthen the stitch all the way to a number 5. And again, stitch 2 rows. This next row is 1/8 of an inch from the other row. We also want to add the gathering stitches to our lining pieces. All right, we're ready to attach our sleeves. I want to mark with the thread tacks where the ruffles are going to stop in the front, so they end at the same side on both parts, left and right. I think it'll be nice if the back is a little bit longer than the front. Our next step is to get our sleeves organized before we sew. So we've used our thread marks to make sure that the linings are correct. So now we can go ahead and create the gathers. And you can always over gather and undo it later. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your front piece and we're going to pin right sides together and flip. So you want to double check that your rolled edge is on the right side. So to pin gathers, pin one end, release a little bit, pin the second, find the middle, and then evenly distribute the gathering. Because I've only got this tiny little area to stitch on, I want a small stitch length. I think I'm going to go for a 2 here. A number 1 foot. So you're going to start where the thread tack is. But don't stitch the tack down. And it is best for your machine to pull out your needles as you go. I'm going to use the needle down feature because I'm working on such a small area. So we have just the self layer positioned, and we can trim out this extra fabric. You can see though why we needed to add a lining. You can see the stitches through this, but the lining will help to hide that. These basting stitches are visible, but we'll pull them out easily at the very end. So we have the front, one arm in, it's looking good. Now we need to add the lining so that we can hide this raw edge there. If you wanted, you could skip this step. So again, we want the front piece of the lining to go towards the front, and you can match it right up, even put it a little bit behind. So you pin one edge, then you match the other. So one side, the other, find the center, and then distribute the ease. So as we attach our lining, we just want to make sure that we're still sewing right on this skinny little binding. Okay, now you want to clip all of your threads and pull out these remaining basting stitches that you do not need. They'll come out quickly. We can also take out our front and back thread tacks. The final thing that we need is an understitching. Right now, it's doing its job and it's hiding it, but we want to really stitch so that you don't see the lining underneath. That's the difference between expensive clothing and cheap clothing. You want to hide the linings. So we do this by pressing. To create our understitch, we're going to not touch the iron to the self fabric because we have all of those nice gathers. We are going to press the seam allowance towards the lining. We don't mind if we lose the gathers in the lining. To save time, I'm going to leave my basting stitches in the lining. No one will see them. To create the understitch, what you're doing is you are stitching the seam allowance to the lining so that it will hold it away from the sheer part. I love to skip steps, but this step is worth it. The closer you can stitch to your finished edge, the more efficient your underlining will be. There you go, you have a fluffy, beautiful, hidden sleeve. You are all set to go, just trim your threads. Stay tuned for more tips and tricks from the 7th Phone Tailoring team on Bernina'sWeAlso.com blog. Thank you for watching.